This episode is brought to you by State Farm Insurance, led by Trey McAdams out of the Clinton offices. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Definitely not the result a lot of us were thinking. I want to know what your concern levels are after that loss to Arkansas Paige Dauer alongside Jimmy Hyams. I want to be realistic, say it's like a 5.5, because the things that maybe went awry or didn't go right for Tennessee were all kind of freshman type mistakes. You would think costed them the most. We look at that final play specifically from Nico Imaliava. Essentially the last play of the game, you've got 6 seconds left, and with him rolling out and trying to find a receiver in the end zone, the time expires, and instead of trying to get it down to a wide receiver, he runs out of bounds. It was interesting though hearing him in the post-game press conference. He says, of course, he was trying to give his guys time, look for Chris Brazzell as he was getting ready to maybe get the ball up to release it. It fell a little loose, so he just kept it in, and then of course ran out of bounds, saying that he needs to have better ball security. But before he even gets to maybe the ball getting loose, the angle he's taking as he's scrambling right, kind of that freshman move, right? Both him and Heupel saying he needed to get better. How concerned are you after watching that final play?
Well, it wasn't very smart.
Yeah.
You got to throw it in the end zone. You got to make some kind of play. You got to get rid of it. You can't run out of bounds. And he did, and it just and the game ends at that point. And he has to know that.
Yeah.
So he's got to play smarter. I did hear Josh Heupel after the game say we played really hard, but we didn't play smart. That's a pretty good indication right there of Tennessee not playing very smart.
Yeah.
So Nico's got to play better. I mean, and as far as I'm concerned, this talk about the Heisman Trophy and Nico needs to stop, because he is not a candidate. He doesn't play at that level. Eventually, do I think he will? Yes, but not right now.
Sure.
That play at the end of the game was one that kind of left me scratching my head about what are you thinking? You don't give yourself a chance or your team a chance to win the game, and for him not to throw it in the end zone or just throw it up somewhere was really surprising.
Yeah, and I think the bigger picture of that moment too is Tennessee should not have even been in a situation where they needed a game-driving win or a game-winning drive to pull out a win against Arkansas. We do know they haven't fared well their last 3 trips or meetings against Arkansas, but that should not have happened. I think you can go to the first half where 3 or 4 consecutive drives and then punts for Tennessee. They're lucky that Arkansas and Sam Pittman wanted to be a little bit too aggressive on their drives, getting to the end zone, but trying to convert those 4th downs and ending up either having to punt it away or having a missed field goal, and they escape with it being 3-0. What did you mostly see from Tennessee's defense that allowed Arkansas just to march down the field really on all their drives?
I wonder if the defense got a little bit tired, and not necessarily the defensive line, because they rotate a lot. But I was surprised that on that very last drive when Arkansas got going, they had 4 consecutive plays where they gained at least 10 yards.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking, are you kidding me? Now, I do think Tennessee let them score a touchdown on the very last play. You could see the defensive
number 9?
backs. Yes.
Yeah.
They're just kind of let him go ahead and score. And Heupel didn't 100% say after the game we let him score, but he said, well, what happened happened. So it was clear that
essentially.
His feeling was that Arkansas was going to run it down and kick a field goal. Do you take a chance with the new kicker, even if it's a 20-yard field goal, of him missing it? Do you take a chance of Arkansas fumbling it or doing something stupid, which they did from time to time during the course of the game? Arkansas blew many, many scoring opportunities during the course of that. And Tennessee was fortunate, whether it was missing a wide-open receiver on a blitz, whether it was a receiver dropping a pass in the end zone. There were so many different ways Arkansas could have, should have had a bigger lead. But when Tennessee took over in that third quarter and scored the 2 touchdowns, and it's 14-3, I thought, here they go. And I was convinced at that point Tennessee wouldn't pull an Alabama against Vanderbilt, right?
Unfortunately.
I really thought that Tennessee was going to win that game at that point, and they just couldn't pull away. They couldn't add points to it. The only quarter they scored was the third quarter.
Right, and it was their first consecutive drives that they were able to score back-to-back those touchdowns from Dylan Sampson.
At Wallace Real Estate, trust is more than just a word. It's been our foundation since 1936. Whether you seek backyard adventures or a quiet spot for your morning coffee, we understand what makes a house a home. Our agents are here to simplify your home journey and to lead you through the process, whether buying or selling. With Wallace Real Estate, you're getting more than guidance. You're gaining a local partner dedicated to bringing your dreams to life. Start your real estate journey at wallacetn.com.
I want to go back to your earlier point about maybe Tennessee's defense being a little tired. I'm looking back at my notes, and Arkansas's opening drive was 9 minutes and 13 seconds. They had two explosive plays, both in the passing game, went for 23 and 16 yards. How surprised are you that even despite the tight coverage that, a Dramad McCoy had on the wide receivers, they were still able to go up, get those catches? And for me, I think it started with Taylon Green, and that offensive line actually held up pretty well, which surprised me. They didn't hold up well against Texas A&M. That's why you have Sam Pittman saying that they don't really have confidence right now because of the way that they performed. And maybe they used that as fuel this entire week, because Taylon Green did not look rattled at all.
No, I thought he played well. He threw for well over 200 yards, well over 250, and I thought he played a good ball game. I thought that for the most part, now he's going to throw a couple of errant passes. He does that, but they avoided the turnovers, which had plagued them.
Yeah.
And then when he went down, it was obvious that Arkansas was really concerned about what are we going to do with this backup quarterback, this freshman who's hardly played.
Yeah, Singleton.
And Singleton didn't really do anything until that last drive.
Right, yeah, because the drive that he came in off the bench, essentially cold, maybe a couple warm-up passes, they do end up settling, I believe, for a field goal on that drive. I believe they didn't get a touchdown on that. But I was really just surprised, even despite the rotation from Tennessee's defensive line, that they really weren't able to affect Taylon Green at all. They did get a number of QB hurries on him, but it wasn't enough to affect him in a way where he wasn't getting good passes off. He started the game 4-4 in the passing game and really kind of continued that down the stretch. Was it interesting to you not only that they were able to get into the red zone, but these drives were so long, and Tennessee's defense, just what we've seen from them being able to get stops, especially on those third downs, that they really weren't able to do that?
One of my keys going in was Tennessee's ability to stop them on third down. Tennessee had been fantastic at that. They'd given up 17% of third down conversions. On the flip side, Arkansas led the SEC. They were converting right at 55% on third down. And Arkansas got the better of it on third down. They were able to convert to third downs, third and short. There was a third and long that they converted along the way. And for them to keep the ball for 9 minutes to open the game, I'm thinking, really? Now, Arkansas they got to the 1 yard line and had the legal procedure, so they had to settle for a field goal. They shot themselves in the foot quite a bit. But I really thought that when Tennessee took the lead, that momentum would carry, and I was wrong about that. And Arkansas's defense held up after that and at least gave them a chance to hang into the game. But I was really surprised at Tennessee's play. I also felt like, while Tennessee struggled on third downs for much of that game, I was surprised that Tennessee's offensive line didn't play better. I thought they would have performed better than what they did against Arkansas. And
I think when you look at their offensive line, the first time you really realize that Lance Hurd is in there, I think it was a false start penalty. So there were a number of these mistakes that should not be happening at this point in the season with those type of veteran players on the offensive line. How surprised are you that still at this point that Tennessee, especially in offense, still continues to be a heavily penalized team, and that there are silly mistakes like offsides, false starting, these types of mistakes that really should not be happening?
No, and the tackles struggle too. You mentioned Lance Hurd. So he had the legal procedure. On one drive, John Campbell, the other tackle, had 2 penalties.
Yes.
He had a holding penalty and another penalty, and that thwarted a drive. So I didn't think the tackles played very well for Tennessee in that particular game.
No.
And Arkansas's got a pretty good defensive front. We had talked about how they only gave up 93 yards rushing per game going into that. But I thought Tennessee would have more success on the ground. I really thought, and I went in and I was absolutely wrong about this, I thought Nico would throw for 300 yards against that secondary.
Wow.
The secondary was giving up 225 yards a game. And Oklahoma State's quarterback, who's really not all that good, threw for over 350. And so I thought that Nico would have a field day. I also was kind of banking on what Sam Pittman said. His team wasn't confident. The quarterback wasn't confident. So I was really surprised at this outcome. And I didn't say, I know that a lot of people thought, well, this is a trap game. And I didn't think so because Tennessee had the open date.
That's what's surprising, right? You had this extra week to prepare, not even necessarily to prepare for the opponent, but to make sure that you are being able to play fundamental football. And it's the fundamentals at the end of the day that cost them.
And another thing that was said by Dylan Sampson after the game, he said, we didn't do a very good job of preparation during our bye week. We didn't take it as seriously as we should have.
Oh.
Is that overlooking Arkansas? Is that what that means?
Maybe.
And so I when I heard that, I thought, well, that's pretty surprising. So anyway, I just didn't see this one coming. And I know the history. Arkansas, they haven't played that many times, but Arkansas has had Tennessee's number when they played in Fayetteville.
Yeah.
Tennessee had lost 3 in a row in Fayetteville, hadn't won there since 2001.
Right.
But that was only 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, that history shouldn't
Last
really
one,
apply
2020,
here.
right? Yeah. So you think, completely different team, new head coach, this won't be like 2020. In fact, it was. And what was really surprising to me, and I think that's a word I've used a couple of times so far, is Heupel was held the offense to under 100 yards in the first half. You look at first half total yards, it was essentially 3-1 in Arkansas's favor. They had just about 220 total yards. Tennessee had 76. Yeah. Funny enough, their drive in the third quarter for a touchdown went to 75 yards. So they almost doubled their total yardage in that one touchdown drive that they had there. I'm not sure where the issue becomes if it really does start at the offensive line and why they weren't able to get any yards, especially to the wide receivers. That was one of my keys to the games, that if you're able to connect with your Mike Matthews, your Dante Thorntons, that you'll be able to win this game. They had success with Squirrel White early. He was quiet, kind of in the middle of the game, but had 7 catches before he ended the game in the sling. But I was confused how, at this point in the season, they're not able to get down to their wide receivers, which if you're not going to have a vertical game, eventually they're going to stop, a Dylan Sampson or a Deshaun Bishop.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned Squirrel White. What did he average? Was it 5 yards a catch?
Yeah.
So you were throwing a lot of screen-type passes to him. I get that. Here's the other thing. You can't tell this on TV all the time, but were the receivers open and Nico didn't see him?
Yeah.
That's hard to discern when you're watching it on TV. I do think he held the ball too long sometimes. Did he hold it because the receivers weren't open? And then the rush got to him. But Tennessee's passing game is not where it needs to be. The intermediate passes, the deep passes, just the consistency of that passing game is not there. I did think Dylan Sampson had another really good game. I felt like going into the game that the only offensive player, at least at the skill position, that was playing exceptionally well was Sampson. It wasn't a quarterback, none of the receivers. Maybe you could argue a Cooper Mays on the offensive line, but the guards. But I just don't see these skill position people stepping up and playing at as high a level as I thought they would going into the season, other than Dylan Sampson.
Yeah, speaking of Dylan Sampson, he did have a nice, I think it was like a 53-yard run and then punches it in for the touchdown. Who stopped him on that 53-yard run, I believe, was Danico Slaughter, who he really had himself a game against Tennessee. He talked after the game that, this was definitely one he was getting up for. He wanted to prove the type of defensive back that he is against his former team that he spent 4 years with. Just the way that Danico was able to affect the game. I know he was matched up with Squirrel White a number of times, but I think he really did a good job of affecting the game for Arkansas.
I do too. Tennessee lost, was it 11 defensive backs?
Yes, transfer,
either to the portal or to the NFL. But taking away those who went to the NFL, of those that went into the portal, he was the one that I thought was probably the best defensive back out of that group.
Yes.
I thought he was a good player, and he was a good tackler, and he's a good hitter. But he did play a good game. I think he had around 8 or 9 tackles for Arkansas. He was in pass coverage. He made tackles in the open field. I thought he played a heck of a game for Arkansas, and kind of ended up being one of the differences in that game. So hats off to him. But I was just really disappointed in Tennessee offensively. Their inability to convert it third downs from time to time. Their inability to get a consistent passing game going. In fact, they didn't. You mentioned the 76 yards. You don't score in the first half.
Yeah.
You had been outscoring people in the first half 149-6.
Did you jinx them when we were talking about that on Friday?
I guess so. I don't have to bring that up anymore.
I know, don't do that anymore. I know, so we've mentioned a couple of concerns, and rightfully so. I think when we look on the bright side, right, what are the bright spots? You've mentioned Dylan Sampson and just the stellar game that he had for Tennessee. I thought Arion Carter, one of those guys that we had talked a lot about in the offseason. He spends a ton of time in the film room. He's there well after practice ends. You can tell that linebacker room led by William Inge has really taken it to heart to be able to be kind of the lockdown for Tennessee on defense. Arion Carter did a great job of affecting the game, getting a couple passes deflected. I really liked the performance that we saw from him, now kind of emerging as one of those top linebackers.
I thought he played his best game in Tennessee uniform. I thought he did a nice job. And I thought Keenan Pili played pretty well. He had 14 tackles to lead the team. So I thought the linebackers played well. I thought the defense played well for the most part. Just that last drive when you have to make a stop, they didn't step up and get that done at that particular time. But And also for the defense to get off the field by giving up only 3 points in that first half, when the offense was doing nothing, and when the Arkansas now it's somewhat to the defense's fault they were on the field that long, because they couldn't stop them on third down as they needed to. But to get out of there with only 3 points, I thought that was a pretty darn good job by the defense. But boy, when it's clutch time and you've got to make that stop, you got a backup quarterback, you got a backup running back in the game.
Yeah.
They had a backup kicker too.
I know.
Interesting to see, but they were banged up at that point, and then they were able to just matriculate down the field and get that touchdown, and just really surprised me. I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, when we maybe try and find another bright spot for this team, it has to probably be James Pierce Jr. For the most part in the box score, it's been quiet. He has done a good job of still affecting the quarterback up until this point in the season, but got a couple of sacks, had a nice TFL in there, and a number of QB hurries, especially on I think it was Singleton towards the end of the game. How important will his production be, for this team, especially on that defensive front? Very,
and his ability to affect a quarterback with either a quarterback hurry or with the sack, or to get him off platform. I think that's big. I thought Pierce, that was his best game that I have seen. He showed up more than he had been showing up, and he was very hard to block, very hard to block.
Yeah.
And I need to go watch the game again, which I typically try to do. I don't know that Arkansas double teamed him as much as other teams did.
Sure.
And I think that allowed him probably a little bit more freedom on the edge to get to the quarterback and affect the game. But I thought Pierce played well, and I look forward to seeing what he does the second half of the season.
Since he does turn the page, they got a huge game in Florida coming up, which is always kind of that emotional type of game because of the way the series has gone as of late. Your concern level, is it kind of a 5 like me, where I feel some of these mistakes, while they are fundamental, they're not categorically something that they're not going to be able to fix? Do you think that this is a Josh Heupel team that can now turn the page? Do they have, the maturity and confidence in themselves to be able to turn the page for Florida?
Now, is your scale 1 to 10?
So 1 is okay, and I think 10 is most concerning. I'm kind of like right in the middle. I want to stay lukewarm for as long as possible.
I want to make sure your scale 1 to 5.
Oh no!
I'm probably a little bit more concerned about it because I know Tennessee's history with Florida. Doesn't matter how bad Florida might be or how good Tennessee might be. Tennessee's had trouble with Florida. In the last 20 years, Tennessee's won twice against Florida, something like that. So. My concern is the tackle position. I know they got the tackles back, but I didn't think either one of them played that well against Arkansas. My concern also is about the passing game. It's not as fluid. It's not as explosive as I thought it would be at this point in the season, so that's worrisome. Defensively, I think they're fine. I think they'll be all right. But where they are on offense is I'm more concerned about that. Sometimes I think it's a little bit of fool's gold when you look at what they did with the Kent States and the Chattanoogas and some of those teams, which were just awful. So yeah, I'm probably okay. I'm at about a 6.
Okay, so not much different than me. Yeah.
Because the offense is not where I thought.
Well, you're concerned because they don't have depth like they do on the defensive line. Right. So if a guy's not performing the way you want him to, you don't really have anywhere to go after that. And you really thought having Campbell and Hurd in there that they would be able to affect the game in a more positive way than what they did. But yeah, so that's our quick post-game report, hoping for a win, but it was a loss, their first loss in SEC play this season. This week, they'll turn their attention to the Florida Gators. We'll be back Monday after Josh Heupel talks with the team, and we'll have a report as we preview and give you keys to the game as they get ready to come back to Neyland Stadium after quite a bit of time away. But thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys on Monday.